video. So in this video, what we are going to do is we will actually take a look at the first UI test that we are going to create. And in Jmix 2, there are quite some changes just because of the fact that it now uses Vaadin 24. So this means also a lot of component UIs and so on have changed. So when we now look into an empty rent your stuff application that what we've used before, there are two tests that are scaffolded, and one of them is actually this UI test here. And this already should give you like a general indication on how you can use UI tests. So it's basically a new slight different annotations. It's called UI test, and then you have like this Spring Boot test annotation where you're referencing the configuration classes that you want, in particular this Flow UI test assist configuration class. And then you can basically use your regular beans like data manager, or also the view beans like this navigators view in order to interact with the screens. Additionally, they have provided UI test utils class to, for example, get a particular component of a particular type. If we look back at, and with that I can actually already close this one. When we look at our Rent Your Stuff application, then you might remember we have like a lot of, or a couple of interaction classes here, for example, for forms interactions, table interactions, and then we also had this web integration test. So here you can see that there's actually quite some change that has to be done. So I prepared that already because it's a little bit too much work to do it here now live in this video. So mainly what I changed is, first of all, it's now not the data, the table interactions anymore, because we don't have the table components, but it's like data grid. And then there are slight changes in the class for the view interactions. It's now also called not screen interactions anymore. But generally the idea behind them stays the same. And additionally then here in this UI integration test, there is now this new usage of the annotations. And when we now look into the user UI test, you can actually compare that to how it was from the generated test. It's slightly different. So here we use those factory methods for component interactions, and we click a button here and we find the current view, then we enter some username fields, password fields, so on, and then we save the form with the forms interactions being with the class, and then afterwards we are checking if the operation result is successful, and afterwards we open up the list view again and see if there's actually like proper item in the table or in the data grid. So this is basically the prep work. And now what we can do is we can go back to our first test case, which we can take, for example, this one here, product browse test. And I will basically copy this one over, and we can then create our first test case. So let's put it under this view package, and I will call it product list view test. And then we have to change a couple of things in order to now comply with this new approach. So first of all, it's UI integration test. Additionally, we can get rid of those not existing imports. And so the auto wiring of the data manager and of the products test data factory can stay the same. Here we don't use the screens anymore, but instead, so this was just another way of using dependency injection, but we can also just inject view navigators. So we will just use this bean, and this is the starting point. So if we compare that to our user UI test, you can see that in the beginning Okay, so here I still use this view interactions mechanism to inject that as a bean, so we'll not do that anymore. This is actually not possible, but instead we will go like this. So the first thing is that we'll say view interactions off, and then we will pass in the view navigators. And with that, it should be view interactions. And then the next thing is that we can rename it. And basically now we have an option to call the open method, and in this case it's not product browse but product list view. So this is what we are going to do, and then I will just change the variable accordingly and name that list view. And as I mentioned before, so since it's not table interactions anymore, so let me just completely replace this name with data grid interactions. And so for this, we actually have to see there's this helper method. Here we have to provide the product list view. I can call it list view again. And here the API also slightly changed. So now we also only want to have the view to be passed in the component ID. So this entity type is not relevant anymore because it can be derived of the return type here. So this should already do the trick, and then perhaps let's call this data grid, and then we call it data grid as well. And yeah, the assertion is the same. We still use assert_j, so let's take this one. And here we basically have to do the same. So I will just copy over this one here and get rid of the screens dependency. And then what we are doing here is that we're using this data grid, and we call this edit method on it in order to go into this edit screen. So this means we have to do the following. So here use the view interactions, and then there's find current view, and then you can say product detail view. And what we should get back is this product detail view. So let me just rename that as well. And then we are checking if the get edited entity that is associated to this view is actually this product that we just looked up. So if we run this now, it's supposed to be working, although there might be one thing that actually prevents us from getting already a successful test. Okay, so there are even two things, so let's take a look. Okay, so this is one thing that I just forgot. So here it's not called products table anymore, but if we go to product list view, you can actually see that the ID of the data grid is now products data grid. So let's change that and rerun the tests. Okay, so what we now can see is that there's one test passing and one test failing. And I've seen that in the preparation for this video as well. And there might be, something. So actually when we look at the, it's basically saying that we expected one particular product, but we got another product. So it might be because in my test database, there's like another product manually set up or whatever. So, and then I reflected a little bit if this is actually the best idea to check if this is the first item, because so the setup is like this, right? So we are at the beginning, we are just creating a new product here, independent of what is in the database. And then we're just opening up the view, and we assume that our new product that we just created is the first item. And this might or might not be true. So in order to make our test a little bit more robust, what we can actually say is we go for the items, and this returns us a stream of products. And then we can, with assert_j, just ask for if this stream actually contains this product or not. And this makes the test a little bit more robust because we're not relying on the order of products anymore here. And with that, actually both should run again. Okay, so with that, we actually now achieved our very first UI test. You can see there are like a couple of changes. You can read the changes up like later in the source code if you're interested, or like copy the corresponding classes if you want. That being said, in Jmix 2.2 or like in Jmix 2 in general, there also have been some improvements made regarding the test assist API, so perhaps this is already enough in your case. Yeah, and with that, I think we are done with the UI tests. And probably I will not do like, a lot of videos now going through all of the tests, but actually I will migrate them one by one on my own. So this is mainly here is just an explanation on how to do that. But in general, if we compare like, all the different tests that we had here, they are mainly all the same. And this is really, some kind of, copy and paste work and adjusting the corresponding things. And then afterwards, seeing that it's either still working or not. And this also, for example, if we are talking about product categories, so my approach would be that I would first create the screens and then basically migrate the tests over, and then make sure that we cover each UI one by one. So with that, I think we can close it. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.